So everybody, this is Wendy Creelman. She is the principal of Live, Work, Play Consulting, Inc. She's also the Elections Canada Returning Officer for Kelowna Lake Country, which is a big job. She is a past professor of the School of Business at Okanagan College. She holds her master's degree in leadership, and she is a past chair of the Canadian Mental Health Association Kelowna branch. She's also a past board member of the Canadian Positive Psychology Association board, and she's currently a director on the Kelowna General Hospital Foundation board. Her passion centers on creative positive environments and promote well-being. I've had the absolute pleasure of working alongside Wendy and under her leadership, and have a lot of love and respect for this woman, as well as for her skills, her work ethic, her dependability, and her kindness. So welcome to our show, Wendy. I'm so happy you're here.
You. Nice.
You look a lot more polished than our pre-show interview.
Yeah, after my workout, I
think you were after your run. Yeah, so you're looking good, girl.
Well, you are too, Jody.
Thank you. I did spruce up a little bit. So I now know a little bit about positive psychology by talking with you to prepare for the show, but tell us what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Well, I really linked into the whole idea of positive psychology when I was doing my thesis for my master's, and it really struck me because in the medical field and in many fields, it really takes a deficit-based approach, what's wrong with us, whereas positive psychology focuses on what's right with us. And so it looks at our strengths and talks about what can we do to actually make the good life, to be at the best we can be. So to me, that was a really refreshing approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really hooked. So I did a lot of research around, okay, what is this positive psychology? And, there's a lot of negativity actually around, the fluff of positive. And it's definitely not positive thinking. It's really about how do we focus more on some of the good stuff that's happening in our lives, which is really timely today, of course, with COVID going on. How do we notice the good stuff as much as we notice the bad stuff?
So we that's do an important distinction. It's not about being happy all the time or rainbows and sunshine all the time. That's not what it's about.
For sure. And let's face it, life has ups and downs. And the negativity bias will always drag us in.
Do its job.
It will do its job. And if we let it, that's where it's going to take us.
Right.
Unfortunately, we have to think more and be more mindful about noticing what is happening around us that's good.
So it's harder to be positive than negative.
Much harder. Yeah. And it takes more positives to counteract a negative. We always seem to remember the negative and we notice the negative. We don't notice the good things. So if someone goes the extra mile, we'll often just take that for granted. Whereas if they come up a little bit short, we'll be right on them.
And there's biology or evolutionary reasons for that.
Yes.
And that's science.
Right. It is science. And, we used to have to protect ourselves and watch out for the negative, the tiger chasing us, or because it was life or death.
Yeah.
But we're still being triggered the same way by the same response. And so positive psychology is really trying to address the fact that we have this negativity bias, and how can we shift the way we're living so that we can actually enjoy life more, because actually there's a lot to enjoy, right?
Right. So what you're going to do then is you're going to talk about this well-being framework that this this area is based upon, and then how to we can apply it in our lives. And then at the very end, we're going to talk a little bit about VIA.
Yes. So what I'll do, positive psychology isn't really that old. It was only brought into being in 1999 by Martin Seligman. He was the president of the American medical association in or psychological association in the States, and so that this whole study now is becoming really widespread. And so he developed this whole framework called PERMA, and we've
PERMA,
recently
P-E-R-M-A-H. Is that it?
PERMAH, yeah. And so each of those acronyms stands for something. And the first one is positive emotion. And so I always highlight Barbara Fredrickson. She's a researcher who discovered a theory called the broaden and build theory. And it's really about noticing the positive within our lives, and that opens us up to more possibility when we're learning. And so she says, you know, we should notice, for example, if we're in the store and we see a smiling baby, we should take that in. That is what she calls a micro moment of positivity. The more we can take those micro moments in, the more we become open to learning and open to noticing and seeing things that we don't notice when we're narrowly focused. So when we're in a bad mood,
is that kind of like, it's kind of like being present and being a little bit mindful as well? That,
yes,
those are kind of intrinsically linked.
Yeah. So when we are in a bad mood,
yeah,
we are very narrow-minded. We don't open to new potential, new possibilities, right? And so if we can build all those micro moments, we actually open up and we're in a much more positive frame of mind.
So you can even experience more of them. It kind of feeds
yes.
itself. It's like smelling
yes.
the roses kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. And so this is all connected physiologically as well. So once we start to notice those bits of positivity, it actually physiologically affects us, and we live longer lives, which is pretty cool.
So is that from the neuroplasticity idea that you create new pathways in your brain, or is that something else, or is that?
You do, because as soon as you start to notice more of the positive, it becomes easier to do, and it becomes more of a habit, right? And so one example I always give is you're driving down the road and you hit 2 or 3 red lights on your way to work, and you go, oh, this day's
worst day ever. Yeah.
This is the worst day ever.
Yeah.
If you hit 3 green lights, you don't even notice.
True.
And so there's an opportunity for us to notice those things and have a good day, and also be open to opportunity. So that is really the P. And then E is being engaged. You know, we need to be engaged in what we're doing. And there's a researcher called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
I've got that written down and I didn't know
how to
pronounce
big,
that.
long. Yeah. And he developed this whole theory around flow.
Which I love that.
Yeah. When we're in flow, we really don't even notice that time is going by.
That's right.
Because we're so engaged in what we're doing. We all need to be in flow at some point in our lives to feel engaged and to really get that feeling of losing track of time and being so connected to what you're doing. And so that is also part of the whole positive psychology framework, is to be really engaged and to find those things that we can be engaged in. And so we've talked about the VIA strengths, which is part of the whole framework of positive psychology as well. It's about our character strengths and how we engage those to live a life that makes us happy. And so
that's the key that connects those later. I had a question about flow, and I wanted to expand on it a little bit, just in case there's some people listening that don't know what that means. I sure didn't know what it meant 10 years ago or whatever it was. You said it's when you're so engaged in an activity, you lose track of everything, time,
Yeah.
where you are, what you're doing, because you're almost in a trance because you're so completely absorbed in what you're doing. And some people get it from gardening. Some people get it doing art or playing music. Other people
Right.
running. Yeah. And it's those moments that you look up and you're like, holy smokes, like 40 minutes just went by, or 2 hours just went by. That's flow.
And you don't even feel hungry, right? Like
Right.
you can go through lunch and 5 hours go by and you go, wow, it feels like it was 10 minutes.
And
Yeah.
isn't meditation purposefully putting yourself in a state of flow to some degree,
Um,
or not?
yes, but you're not actually engaged in activity, right?
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
so the meditation is more useful in terms of the mindfulness and noticing the positive
Okay.
in your life, right? To be able to reflect on that. Um, Loving kindness meditation, for example, is really great with relationships. So that's the next one we're going to talk about,
Okay.
the
Well, why
R.
don't we move into that? Yeah.
So
R is
R,
for, yeah.
this is really where it can get really challenging, right? Our relationships can be tough
Yeah.
and they take work. However, the research is really clear. There's lots of research. Kelly McGonigal, for example, has done research, and she's written a book called The Upside of Stress and a great TED Talk, which I think you've got the link for,
I do.
that
If
you can
anybody wants
share.
it, I could share it. Yeah. I'll share it. Actually, I'll
Yeah.
post it. Yeah.
And she talks about how relationships really help us in terms of combating stress, and that the tend and befriend mechanism that we have within us enables us, and this is also from our history of being in community and being able to tap into those relationships when you are in times of stress.
They're stronger as a group than alone.
Yes. And then there's also a lot of research. Robert Waldinger has done a whole bunch of research. This is a Harvard study that has gone on for years, and they've tracked two sets of men, one set from Harvard and then a set of men in Boston. And they track them all through their lives. And I think this study is probably about 78 years old now. And so what they found is the men that lived the longest actually had good, solid relationships, and how important relationships are in our life. And so they're challenging and difficult, but it's also, I was telling you about the book I just finished, which is the top 5 regrets of the dying. So Bronnie Ware wrote that book. And so she worked with people on their deathbeds and found themes in terms of all the people that she met of the regrets that they had. And they really shared with her, so that she knew while she was young that she should try and make sure she builds her relationships. And so the top regret is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And often in relationships, we fall into those patterns of trying to be who somebody wants us to be. But she also found that the fourth regret was, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends, and how important those relationships are all through our lives. And she also found that people were regretting the fact that they worked too hard and that they didn't have the courage to express their feelings. And I think a lot of this is mixed into the whole relationship realm, our relationships with ourselves and our relationships with other people. And, it's not about the stuff in our lives. It is about our relationships.
I know
And
that during my years practicing estate law, I feel like there was a top 5 that was so similar to everybody I was working with that was at the end of their life. And it was exactly the things you just said. But in my experience, it was number 1 was relationships.
yes,
Regret about having not healed certain relationships or not had valued certain relationships or had let some slide when they shouldn't have. That friendship one you brought up is really cool, because I know a lot of people right now during the pandemic are reaching out to people they haven't reached out to in a long time. And that's a beautiful thing. That's really healthy to do right now. So it's one of the silver linings of what we're dealing with right now is we can work on our relationships right now in our homes and by connecting with people.
So that's the R. And then we move to M for meaning. And I always talk about Viktor Frankl, who's a psychologist that survived Auschwitz.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he really found that when people didn't have something to look forward to, that they were dying more frequently. And, you know, we need to have the meaning in our life. You know, why are we here? What is my purpose?
Yeah.
Those are really, you know, instrumental questions to be asking ourselves in terms of high levels of well-being, which we're striving for, and which positive psychology really works towards. How do we live our best life? And then he also found that, you know, if we can't change a situation, like if we're in Auschwitz, for example, we can always change our attitude towards that situation. And mindfulness can come in here, Jody. Really,
responding instead of reacting.
Yeah. And then we have accomplishment.
Can we stop there for 1 sec with the meaning? Because there's another good way to tie it into how we're all feeling right now is we don't have control over some things right now with this pandemic, but we do have control how we respond to it. And if we practice some mindfulness, take a breath, take a pause, center ourselves, we can choose to respond to it without fear and panic and all those things. And we can choose to focus on, like, point number 1, on some of the positive, good things in our lives. Is that number 1? Was that the P?
Number 1 is positive emotions.
Yes.
Focusing on, and our relationships can definitely be positive emotions, you know.
Okay.
But you have to take the good with the bad. Unfortunately, it's not all going to be good along the way. And then A is for accomplishment. So we need to have goals in our lives. We need to achieve things that we feel proud about. And I think you follow James Clear, right?
Yeah, he's my favorite
Atomic Habits.
Newsletter guy.
And he's got a lot of great ideas around how do we establish, you know, healthy habits in our lives. And the last letter is H for health.
Can we go back to A for a sec?
Yeah, for sure.
I have one line in my notes for this. So I was curious. Accomplishment, there's no rules around that, right? Your accomplishment can be that you're being more patient with your family. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to get a degree and a great job and it doesn't have to be that kind of accomplishment. It can be little tiny personal accomplishments. That matters too, right?
That matters too. Yeah. And again, getting back to the mindfulness is really, you know, if you're able to notice those things, I think a lot of people don't notice those little accomplishments. And life is made up of those everyday little things, right? And you know, eventually we realize that is life, right?
Well, I was thinking about, you know, what if I clean the guinea pig and then vacuum and change the laundry? I do feel good.
Yeah.
And that is an accomplishment. It's just not a very exciting one. Or but it does make me feel
nice. Good. It's nice at the end of the day. And I know, you know, during this lockdown, I've got a lot accomplished in my house. And it's great to check off the list. You know, it feels good. And
it does.
It feels much better than, you know, sitting and watching TV all day, which, you know, I did a bit too, for sure, during this. But eventually you get to the point where I have to accomplish something or I'm going to go insane. For sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So the last one is H for health. And that's really, you know, you can take James Clear's work and apply it to the H. So the H is around sleep, physical activity, and healthy eating. And so setting those good habits, again, they need to be intentional, right? Just like noticing the positive in our lives, we have to be intentional about that. It's not just going to happen. And especially with the pandemic going on and everybody heading to the fridge so much. You know, being able to, you know, eat well, reduce your sugar, eat the whole foods,
Limit
try not
alcohol.
to limit your alcohol, eat more plant-based. All of those things are really important, and they're very foundational for the whole PERMA framework, right? If you're not well in terms of your physical health, if you're not getting your sleep, for example, that is going to affect every single one of these and not enable you to actually accomplish. And so that's the whole framework. And we talked about the strengths aspect of this.
Yeah, via. Whenever
important.
I'm from Ontario, so when I heard via, I thought about the trains.
Oh,
Got a little
yeah.
homesick.
Yeah. So via is values in action.
Yeah.
And so you're going to post the link for that, right?
Yeah, and it's an institute on character, right?
Yes. Yes.
And yeah.
And so they have an online assessment tool, which is free, and it takes, you know, 12 to 15 minutes to do the assessment. And it lists 24 character strengths. Yeah, awesome.
This is my report.
Yeah. So based on the way you answer the questions, and you need to answer them basically from your gut without overthinking them, it tells you what your signature strengths are, which are your top 5, and all the other ones that come on below it. And I noticed, Jody, your top one is appreciation of beauty and excellence. And I love that one. There's been a ton of research done around what we call awe, AWE.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you go on your big hikes and you get to the top and you go, oh, that's awe. So it's being in awe of something bigger than yourself, right? And the appreciation of beauty and excellence is so good for the soul. Not everybody notices things like you would, because your number one is appreciation of beauty and excellence. And it's not just nature, it is also excellence that you notice in terms of people, people that you might admire, right? And that excellence, just you really notice it and take it in. It's really important for you.
It does.
And so these character strengths help us to understand what do I tap into when I'm stressed? Where do I go when I'm feeling so great? You know, when I'm accomplishing something, and you're feeling over the top, you're usually enacting your signature strengths.
Okay, so I wanted to jump in, and we talked about this in the pre-show interview. I know a lot of people in the third space world are familiar with the Gallup Strength Finders system, and that is also a strength-based system, but it's different. You explained it to me, but maybe you should explain it to everybody else. The difference.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the Clifton Strength Finders is used primarily in workplaces. It talks about your talents and as you would apply them in a workplace. You can use VIA in the workplace too, and I have. But the Clifton Strength Finders are the talents that you have. So
the things you're naturally good at.
Yes. So Maximizer is one for me.
Okay.
And I hate wasting food in my fridge. I have to figure out recipes to use everything up. I have to maximize. And it's a theme I carry with me in everything I do. So similarly, the VIA are also strengths, but they're character strengths. So they're basically 24 character strengths that are all the things that are good about being human, right? And so we have all of them. They're just, some of them show up more in us than others. And so for me, my number one is the love of learning. And I've really tapped into that in terms of the positive psychology, but also during this pandemic. And there's so many great opportunities to learn online right now. So that I know helps me when I'm under stress, that's where I will go. And so looking at some of your other ones here, I know curiosity is your number 5, and that I see in you all the time. You're really curious. You're really interested in other people, and it shows, right? So I don't know, maybe you could speak to how you think curiosity shows up in your life.
Yeah, actually, the whole report I got from VIA was it. I knew it was bang on for me. So obviously, I know it knows what it's doing. However it does what it does. I think that my top 5, my top 10 would be words that I think that someone would use to describe me if they had to pick 10 words. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. So appreciation of beauty and excellence, creativity, honesty, humor, curiosity,
Yeah.
bravery. Bravery was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Forgiveness. And it's true. Like, I think how you described this to me is that I do lean into those things all the time, but I rely on them more when it's tough. And I use them also to bring joy and happiness into my life. Those are the things that make me happy.
Yeah. So the research is really clear that if we know what our strengths are,
Yeah.
and we use them,
Yeah.
as much as possible, we are happier. And
Huh.
so physiologically, it affects us. So we live longer, right?
Yeah.
When we are happier and not in the doldrums all the time. But it also enables us to understand who we are. And often we rush through life and we don't spend the time to just understand, okay, what's important to me and how I'm showing up. And honesty is my second one as well. So I get, that's really important to me. I will notice and I will see somebody that is not honest pretty quickly, so I do notice those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so honesty is super important to me, and I guess one of the stories I always tell about honesty and bravery is one of mine as well, is when my boys were teenagers, we were going to the skateboard shop, and my son went in and got what he needed and came out, and he was in the back seat with his brother, and he goes, "Hey, that guy just gave me $20 extra in change." And immediately my honesty came in, because as a parent, right, we want our kids to be honest. And I said, well, somebody's going to be out $20 in their cash. We got to go back. And his brother said, no way, Mom, we're not going back. He's not giving that money back. Yeah. I said, yes, he is. Yeah. So I drove him back, and he went in and came out, and I said, so what happened? And he said, well, it was the owner. And I told him, and I gave him money. And I said, well, what did he say? Nothing. Then my bravery kicked in, and I said, what do you mean nothing? So I went marching into the store up to the owner and said, excuse me, but as a parent, I'm trying to teach my child honesty, and it would really help if you had given him some congratulations, or at least said, thank
well
you
done, or something. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's an example, and you'll see, once you know what your strengths are, you'll start to see that where they show up.
Yeah, so I guess I need you to connect the dots one more time, and how PERMA and this connect, right?
Okay.
So understanding yourself is important, and then you can understand your behavior better and you can make better choices. But in terms of using what you learned through VIA in order to work on noticing positive things more often, so that you can fight that program we have that's negative.
Yeah, so it really falls in the engaged,
okay,
the E in PERMA, because in order to be engaged in life, you have to understand what your strengths are. And in order to have a good life, you have to understand who you are. In order to have good relationships, you have to understand who you are.
Okay.
So that's really the foundational part. In terms of, again, coming back to the Clifton and the VIA. Clifton is a business, and so it's not peer reviewed, that assessment tool, but VIA is peer reviewed.
Okay.
And it's a nonprofit. It's been done millions of times, translated into different languages. There's also an assessment tool for children in the VIA.
I got to tell
And
you, I love Clifton Strengths a lot, and
yeah,
my whole family's done it, and it was pretty impactful for all of us to get to know ourselves better and to understand how we do our days and everything we do. We're doing it now. I understand why we're so different in the way we do things and how we prioritize differently, and it allows you to understand someone else better too, of why they make the choices they do or react the way they do. So this is just another type of tool that can explore this in a different way, in a deeper way, to understand one another as well, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the Clifton and the VIA really complement each other well. It's just another dimension of who you are. So character strengths and talents.
Yeah.
And it is an opportunity for you to be able to strength spot. So with Clifton as well as VIA, that's always a tool that we offer up, is to say, now that you know what the strengths of your coworker are, or your husband, or your daughter, or whoever's in your life, you can start to spot those when you see them. And it's an opportunity to appreciate each other, because we all like to be appreciated, and it builds relationships. So it's another dimension of using strengths in order to build those relationships, and create the positive emotion, right? Because when you notice that somebody's done something that has impacted you in a positive way, and you actually express gratitude, which is one of the 24 character strengths, it feels good all around, and it builds people up. So
I know I use it positively with my parenting. So you can say, wow, look, you're really working that whatever strength it is, connector or whatever. I see that strength coming out in you right now.
Yeah.
And you can also, when they have struggles or behavior you're not super excited about, you can be like, wow, I noticed that you could have made this choice instead of that choice. Or I noticed, it's just a good way to, it's almost like it gives you vocabulary to use in some of these conversations. And similarly at the workplace, right? Like we've done it at the same organization once, but when your team's all done it, we actually put it on our doors of the office at one point. And so you, not only does it allow you to understand each team member better and what they can bring and what value they can add and what they're really naturally good at and what makes them happy, so that you can put them in the right place, right? And have them do the right jobs within a team environment. I mean, that's huge stuff. That's powerful. Productivity wise, but happiness wise too.
Yes. And like any strength, you can overplay it. So you have to be aware of that. So my honesty can get in the way, right? If I'm not careful. So I have to be aware, again, coming back to that mindfulness, that can happen. And,
curiosity has led me down a garden path a few times back in the day. And my humor, I'm constantly, in this type of environment and in my professional life, I have to constantly not be silly and say stupid things, because that's how I'm wired. But yeah, so I get what you're saying.
And this is why, family dynamics and group dynamics in terms of teams, it's really important, because if you're really high on creativity and you're on a team that has a deadline, you've probably got someone else that has prudence as one of their top 5 strengths, who might say, hey, we're getting kind of off track here. And if we're going to meet our May 15th deadline,
light a fire under it. Yeah.
Great, but we have to get going. So you can see how those can get overplayed, and sometimes underplayed. Actually, more often they're probably underplayed than overplayed, where you want somebody to bring out their strength in a specific situation, and when you know that they have that because you've seen them use it, you can do that in a really nice way in terms of leadership, to help bolster them. Maybe they just had a bad sleep and they're not feeling like they can tackle it, and you can help them and guide them, based on what you've seen their capabilities are.
Mm-hmm. So let's review PERMA, the letters one more time before we're done today.
Yeah, so the P is positive emotions, and the E is engagement, and the R, relationships. M is for meaning, and A is for accomplishment, and then H is the health, which I always say, if you're, you think, okay, I'm getting overloaded, there's way too much to think about, I always say, just focus on relationships and physical activity, and the rest will happen. So if you're physically active, you're more apt to eat well. And if you're physically active, you probably got a walking buddy or a running buddy, and you're getting the relationship and the physical activity all at the same time, which is my maximizer coming through. Yeah. And so it all flows really nicely. And, I guess lastly, I would say the work of Carol Dweck, she's a positive psychologist. She coined the growth mindset. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but we have a fixed mindset and we have a growth mindset. So the fixed mindset says, I'm just not smart enough and I can't do that. Whereas the growth mindset says, not yet. So if I didn't accomplish it now, what is it I need to do to learn to be able to do it? So
okay.
I don't know how to do it yet, but I can learn. So failure is an opportunity for growth in a growth mindset. And we have a mix of both, but we have to try and look for the learning in all of those tough situations in order to grow. And that's really a part of the whole positive psychology movement too, is how can I show up to be the best I can be, knowing that I have to notice positive emotions, I have to engage in my life, know what my strengths are, I have to focus on my relationships because they're super important for the happiness in my life, and the fulfillment, and the meaning. What's my purpose? And the accomplishment. So what are my goals, and what is it I'm going to be really proud of that I've left behind? And lastly, focusing on yourself in terms of setting the foundation for your health, eating well, exercising, and making sure you're getting adequate sleep, because you've got to do all three of those for the renewal and the energy that we need to do the rest of the acronym of positive psychology. To be at our best, we have to make sure we take care of ourselves.
So it's just really cool. It's occurring to me while you're summarizing this, that the framework is a way to formalize how to live a happier life.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a misunderstanding out there that happiness just happens, or people who are happy are lucky, or it's not. You can actually work on it, and you can build it if you follow those principles.
Yeah. And so, in positive psychology, we talk about eudaimonic happiness, which is the tough happiness, which is more longer term. So as parents, it's really tough to be a parent, and long term, you reap benefits. Like I'm reaping benefits now. My kids are now grown. They're all, they're have families, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. But it was a lot of hard work raising 4 kids, but it's great now. So that's eudaimonic.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard work.
Yeah.
But you accomplish these things that you are super proud of, right? And then
is that like delayed gratification a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really the extreme example. But so hedonic happiness is what you're talking about. It's the hedonic treadmill, they call it, right? So you buy your new fancy car and you're really happy for a couple of months and then it dissipates, right? You win the lottery, you're really happy and it dissipates. And, you know, we've all heard stories about people who almost go back to a set point after they win the lottery.
Yeah.
Because, you know, hedonic happiness, yeah, we need some of that for sure. It's the, you know, the positive surge of, you know, we get when we buy the new car, it's the stuff. But we all know that it's not about the stuff in our lives.
It's shallow and it doesn't last long.
Yeah. It's shallow. Yeah. Having said that, we still need we need hedonic happiness as well. But
I can tell you I'm missing my Dairy Queen runs after dinner right now, because that's one of the ways our family gets that little quick hit of happiness. So
yeah,
I can't wait for Dairy Queen to open again. But you're right, it doesn't last. By the time I go to bed, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just ate that entire massive sundae. And then I'm not happy anymore.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess, you know, when we're talking about positive psychology, it is about taking responsibility for your life and knowing that this is a proven framework in science, that if we can focus on that framework and make choices that follow that framework.
And discipline, right? Because it's not just something that someone will give you. You have to, it's hard.
Sometimes. It's up to you.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody's going to hand you happiness on a silver platter. It's like you've got to work for it. And we have good days and we have bad days. Yeah. And understanding that every day is not supposed to be good. It's hard work living, but it's worth it because we get these incredible paybacks. So, you know, in our relationships and in the accomplishments that we're able to accomplish in life, and just even the accomplishment of taking care of yourself, right? And it's
having a healthy body. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Wendy. That's I got a lot more out of our live show than even the pre-show. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Lots of stuff to think about, and just wondering how we can share some of these resources. Maybe we'll post them on our social media, or, oh, you know what I'll do is when I post the recording of this YouTube, I will attach them at that spot.
Yeah, sounds great. And, you know, if people are interested in positive psychology, there are some free courses online. And if you just Google those, it's interesting to learn about the science behind this framework and understand that, you know, it's a pretty solid framework, and it's something for us to build our lives around. And
great time to start right now, right? And
yeah, for sure.
Use it going forward. And so what's the website that they can learn more or do some of these courses, or are there multiple websites? Do you have one off the top of your head?
Well, Coursera has some. So Coursera,
okay.
Coursa. I'll see if I can dig a couple more up and send you the links.
Great.
Yeah.
Or just Google it.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Wendy.
You're welcome.
I hope you come back and talk about something else, because I know you well enough to know you know a lot of other stuff you can share with us. So hopefully I can convince you to do that. Yeah, so this show will be uploaded on our YouTube channel in the next few days. So check that out. Stay tuned to Facebook, Instagram, and our website for learning more about our charity and learning all about what we're up to with the show and with our programs and services. Thank you from all of us on behalf of Wendy, on behalf of Thursday Charity. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you Thursday. And if not, we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye, Wendy.